Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Cindy. Cindy's from Sasquatch Sisters Northwest, and she considers herself to be an experiencer. She's had some really interesting things happen over the years. We're going to talk to Cindy about that today. But Cindy, how's it going?
Oh, fine. How are you? It's hot here in Utah.
Is it? It's not too bad in Iowa. I'm in central Iowa, and we are kind of chilled out for a little bit. You know, it's doable to walk around. But I've seen, out in Oregon, they were having 100+ temps out there. It's pretty wild. But
yes. It's 100 degrees at my property in North Idaho, and usually it's not like that. Maybe like 2 weeks it's in the high temperatures, and then after that it's usually, at night it gets pretty cool. So that's what's nice.
Oof. Well, Cindy, I got to start at where I usually start with these is, so what got you into this wild Sasquatch adventure to begin with?
So when I was young, I don't know, I was probably 7 or 8. I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film, and I was born and raised in Texas, in South Texas. So when I was little, I saw the film, and I don't know how I saw it or where. I thought my father took me to see it, but I don't really remember. But that stuck with me forever. I grew up in Laredo, Texas, and also in South Padre Island and Harlingen. That's where I was raised. My grandparents did have a family ranch somewhere in Laredo on the border there. But that movie just stuck with me. And I remember never liking to be in any kind of woods growing up, like subconsciously not realizing it was tied to that. I realized that like when I started researching and everything was connecting. But as I grew up, I didn't even think about that until years later when I was in my 30s, married, living in East Texas, basically east of Dallas, at the beginning of what I think they call the Piney Woods. Because in East Texas, they have different units or different national forests that make up what they call the Big Thicket. So that is how I started, or the first thing that got my interest. But it wasn't until way later in life that I became involved when the internet poured around in the 90s, like 97 or 96, when we got the internet. I don't know, I typed in Sasquatch Bigfoot one day, and around 1998, sorry, I just found some people, and I was horrified because at that time I was living in East Texas, out in the country on acreage, and we had horses, and I was very active outside, and I had 2 children. Well, one, my other son came later, and I just could not believe it that they were actually in East Texas and actually where I was living around that part. But that's what got me started, basically.
That's interesting. What an area to kind of be introduced into it. That East Texas area has some wild things happen. Did they ever actually come to where your property is? I know that sometimes they're drawn to horses, and there can be some interactions that happen there. Yeah.
So I hooked up with a lot of people, and some of them are known, which I won't say their names because I don't know because where I ended up, where I'll get to later, I don't think that they would share the same views, so I don't want to use their names, but I hooked up with different people, and this one guy, I can use his name. His name is Luke Gross. He is out of Northeast Texas, and he has a ton of experience with these beings, and he taught me how to just go out in the woods and just, he is really the first person that introduced me to the topic, and he's very patient. I also met other people through him. I think at that time he had founded him and Craig Woolheater had founded the Texas Bigfoot Research Center. So that was in its infancy. Like, I was only there briefly because I had met some other people that I ended up researching with every single month for a couple of years, like up until 2003. And what happened is that I was living in East Texas, and I started to go out into the field with different people. And this group of people that I went out with, two of these guys grew up on ranches with these beings on their ranches, like their grandfathers, called them. There's a term in the South, boogers. There's another topic, but these guys lived on ranches, and their grandfathers told them about these Sasquatches out in the woods. And then the area that I spent a lot of time in was Boykin Springs in East Texas. And I think that's in the Angelina National Forest. I could be wrong. And so I have heard every sound. I have heard every grunt, every growl. And we spent many nights there. And we would do the typical thing of going out in the daytime. And we would go to a lot of the same places over and over to study them. So Boykin Springs is one place that I went. And other times, me and my husband would go horseback riding. So we would trailer our horses to areas like East Texas or the Big Thicket. Southeast Oklahoma. Like I could do one whole hour just talking about those two places. So in 1997, the guy who shoot our horses said there's this place 3 hours north of here, southeast Oklahoma, called Tallahena, and Honobia. I say it Honobia, so that's not the right way to say it. And he said, I go riding up there with a group of people, and y'all should come. My husband said, I think we got family there in Tallahena. So eventually we went up to go meet my husband's family. He had an aunt there. She was a real estate agent, and everybody knew her. She was a broker in Tallahena. So we went to go check out the area, and we did not take our horses. It was just me and my husband. We spent a couple of nights at his family, and then we did camp out like one night out in Honobia. And I will never forget, this is before I got like really famous with the Bigfoot Festival. I will never forget that little Honobia Creek store there. There was a little post office in there. We would just stay like in that area up in the mountains there. But in 1997, we were camping out. We had no horses, and we were just checking out the area to see if it was a place we would like to return to bring our horses, because the guy who shoot our horses said that every October, like 100 of them go for equestrian camping and for riding for like a whole week. So we were checking it out, trying to kill two birds with one stone, or however that saying goes. So there we are camping, and all of a sudden we hear this like ambulance noise, a woman screaming. It was a howl of a combination of things. And I said, what the heck is that? Because we're up in the mountains. Like, what is that? I said, that can't be an ambulance. I mean, we're way up here in the mountains. And my husband goes, I don't think that's an ambulance. And he's ex-military, so he's always packing. So I wasn't too worried about it. But that actually was a siren call, what I call a siren call, that I would hear many, many times in Southeast Oklahoma. So 97, before I even started researching, because that was like a year and a half later. So everything ties together with my journey every little thing, like there's no accidents. So meanwhile, I started researching in East Texas with these people, these two guys that grew up on ranches, and there was other females there, and we perfected areas over and over. And some of these people had night vision and different pieces of equipment. And I have heard T-Rex sounds. Well, but I say a T-Rex, like a roar of, is how I describe it, from far off in the distance, like in 2002, 2003, 2000, 2001. I mean, all these years I spent out in the big thicket and in Southeast Oklahoma, and I have had close encounters. When I say a encounter, it's not always a visual. An encounter can be something of, whether it's in close proximity of, we know there's something there, and if you are having the same things happen, like the same sounds, if you start seeing the same things in the woods, like structures, but you don't have a visual, I still call that a encounter. And 99%, I am pretty sure it is a Bigfoot, or because they all have the similar qualities, but without having a visual. So I guess you can argue, well, you know something is there. So I had a visual in East Texas, a place we would go horseback riding. Sulphur Springs, I think, is where it was at. And that's actually not too far from Lake Tawakoni. We have property out there, and at the time, that's where I was living with my husband's family. There was multiple houses on this property, and they are still there today. So from 99 to 2003, I went to all these areas, and I had different encounters. But there was one encounter that happened in Boykin Springs, and I was with this group of people, and we had a exciting, weird night. And I've had to ask some of my friends that were there, what happened, because I was with my friend at that time. Her name was Kelly, and we were with this group of people. And that night, me and Kelly were in the woods. It was probably late, like maybe midnight or after. And then there was other team members also out in the woods, listening, kind of doing their own thing, whether that's looking through night vision or just listening or, whatever. Well, this one night, I was just like frozen. Some people call that infrasound. I don't know. But one of the people that was there, I think he used to work for NASA. I'm not sure. But he was talking about this in the 90s about infrasound, and he could explain it to you, numbers, I mean, everything. Like, I can't do that. And it really didn't land, like I didn't really comprehend at that time. I just knew something happened and I was frozen, and that multiple times there have been many events, and that was all I needed to know. And so on this one night, I was frozen. I could not move, and it seemed like it was for minutes, but I'm sure it was for only seconds. But when I tell you I could not move, I could not move. I was trying to look at my friend Kelly, and she was lit up like a big light. It's hard to explain. Her whole outline of her body was like lit up. And then all of a sudden I was released. And I remember falling to my knees. And then I got up and I was like, what happened? And at one point, one of the guys said that there was a lot of them out there in the woods. And also that night, I think there was more people that had come along. And this is part of what I think I've blocked out. There was more people there that night than was supposed to be. So it was time to go, and we all got in the vehicles. And I was in one truck. There was this one guy and his dog, and another guy. And then I think I was, there was maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. So the way that we came in, it was not blocked. This happened at Boykin Springs, and I forgot. I think the pond is called, it's not called Kelly's Pond, Sexton Pond. I don't know. I would have to look it up. But that was something, nothing has ever happened to me like that. It was energetic. It was supernatural. It did not hurt me, but I was clearly frozen, and then I was released. I could feel it. And I don't know why my friend that I was looking at, she also got affected. I don't remember if she couldn't move, but I know I couldn't. And I remember that when we all left, someone said it's time to go. And they were looking through their night vision, and they could see multiple beings in the woods. And when we left, the entryway was blocked off. And I know they got out and cleared it. And that's really all that I remember from that night. I do know that one chased one of my colleagues to his truck. And I think it took a swat at him, or it chased him to the truck. I think it happened that night. That could have happened on a different night. But that night, other things happened to other people, and they've actually talked about it on podcast. And after that, I did not go back into the woods for a couple of months. And then in 2002, I became pregnant with my second child. And I was out in Oklahoma researching up until like 7.5 months, 8 months being pregnant. And finally, I couldn't go out into the field. And then around that time, my husband was active duty, and I had been researching like maybe 5 years. Now, my mentality at that time was that I never believed that they were a ape running around in the woods. And instinctively, I knew that. And I knew that they were flesh and blood. That was because that is what I was taught. That is how the group of people felt, I think. And so my husband got transferred to North Idaho to run the unit of the motor pool, I think is what you call it. So I had quit my career, and we moved up north, and I was going to be done researching, because at that time I thought they were aggressive. Now, I don't think that today. I think there's different types, but because of what I had experienced first in the field, I didn't think any differently. I just thought that a lot of them were pretty aggressive. But I can tell you that I have been to southeast Oklahoma, and I have had multiple encounters there as well. I've been chased out on horseback, where I saw something dark running to the side of me, and my dog and horse just whipped around, and my horse ran back to camp. There was a group of people that took off to go horseback riding, and my husband was one of them. I stayed back. I don't remember which horse. I think it was JJ, my paint. And I don't know, we just went up this hill, and the next thing I know, he just whipped around, and my dog also had sent something, and I smelt something, and I can only describe it as like cinnamon. I mean, I don't know. That smell would come back over many, many times. Other people have told me maybe it's a floral smell. I have smelt the ugly smell too on other occasions. So I don't know why there's different smells, or if it has anything to do with the topic at all. But I just know that I noticed there was a smell when I had an encounter. And so I spent a ton of time up in southeast Oklahoma. And then after that happened to me in Texas, I was like going to be done writing. And my husband went up to North Idaho first to find a place for us to live. And I stayed back to train someone for my job. I gave notice 6 months, and I worked in Dallas, and my children at that time were like 7, 8, and no, let's see, 7, and then my younger son was born. So there is a span there. And my horses, I noticed some patterns. In the mornings, I would go feed them out in the pasture, and in the back of the pasture is a ton of woods. And I have been back there with the TBRC, who was Craig and Luke at that time, and we did find some things. And even years later, Craig would say, hey, where is that area back of your property? I'm going to take some people back there. So there was something happening in the back of our ranch there in East Texas. But I did notice that my horses' manes were kind of messed up. And I don't want to say it was braided. Some people called it a braid or a witch's knot. But I know what a typical knot is because we had barbed wire. I hated the barbed wire. But these were different. But what was disturbing was the tails. The hair was parted, their tails, like something would part their tails. We've had 3 horses to 9 horses at various times. So we would explore that later. People would have these guys that grew up on ranches had an opinion. One of them had an opinion about it, which is pretty disturbing. However, my horse was fine. He was not traumatized. I don't think so. So I did notice that, but we didn't really explore it until I had moved to Idaho, and the same thing was happening there. So that is my version of what happened to me starting out in East Texas and Oklahoma. So eventually my husband did find a home, and I specifically told him no house in the woods because we were hauling 3 horses up there. And there were still a couple of horses left that were my other family members. So it was like it was February or March. He found a home, and he sent me the picture. It was on 6 acres, and it's beautiful up there. But the problem is that it was in the woods, and I just said, no, keep looking. And he said, well, there's really nothing left. This is what we can afford, because we still had our home in East Texas that we had to figure out what we were going to do with, because we couldn't afford 2 mortgages, and I was quitting my career, so things were going to be tight. So he put an offer down on the house, and they accepted it, and I arrived up at North Idaho with our horses. It took us 4 days to get up to North Idaho.
Cindy, this is an incredible story so far. I mean, you've hit all the places that people that are into Bigfoot, like, they want to go to the East Texas, to Southeast Oklahoma, and maybe I'm just talking for myself there, but you're talking about that horse incident, and I've also taken reports like that from Southeast Iowa as well. It is a little unsettling, and specifically Van Buren County. There's a lot of things that seem to be going on there. But when you were in Southeast Oklahoma, and I guess this could be anywhere, was there ever a time where something happened to you? You were involved with a a situation with a Sasquatch where it got very intense. You're like, I'm at the point where if I could just get out of here right now, just time to go.
Well, I can talk about the Honobia incident, the siege of Honobia, if you want me to a little bit.
So, I mean, I really don't know anything about your history at all. Were you involved with the siege at Honobia?
No, I just was in the area writing all the time. Okay. At the time that happened, I think it was 2000. Mm-hmm. But my aunt knew my aunt knew that family, and she speaks very highly of them. So what happened is that we were going up to Oklahoma at least every couple of months to ride, and in October, my husband was there for like a month, but we would go there. Obviously, like in fall when it was cooler, and I know we've gone in summer a couple of times. So my aunt, sometimes we would leave the horses at camp, and somebody would stay at camp, and I might stay at camp. Then my husband would drive to Tallahena and see his aunt, and then vice versa. Then I would go because someone would have to stay with the horses. And if we were with a team of people, then we could both go. So the story that happened, the siege of Honobi, involved a family where these Sasquatches were coming to their property, and the children had seen them. And there was, these are just regular guys that are smart. They're not a bunch of dumb hicks that others have, or this organization, I guess, that came in, the BFRO came in and tried to help them. I know I've read the BFRO story. Anyone can go read it. And it's a great story, but, these are people that are hunt. They hunt, they have jobs, good jobs, and they have children, they have lives, just like anyone. So they were living on this property, and the Sasquatches were coming in, and they were a problem. And they were this family just wanted them gone. They did not want them to be researched. They wanted them gone. They are hunters, like I said. So they reached out to the BFRO, who came in, and they took their report, and it got to a point to where these two brothers, one of them shot one, and then it went out. And I know there's more to the story. I'm actually friends with one of the brothers, and he just they don't want to talk about it. And they were put through the ringer, basically, possibly because how the whole thing was handled. I don't know, but I know they were not happy with how it was handled. Everybody's got opinions, but I don't blame them. How, people just want to be left alone. When you reach out to someone for help, and then, people come out and they want to study them, dissect the whole situation. So I wasn't there, but I can tell you that it's a true story, and, people have opinions about it. My aunt called me and said, "Hey, I really don't want you, have you heard about what's happening out here?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, I had started researching when we were going out there. I was fully aware of what was happening out there, but she had a conversation with one of the family members, one of the wives. I don't remember which wife it was, but she told me the story, or some of the story, and she said that she totally believed them. And then I think it was hyped up or something. I don't know. The story, it's just, it's unfortunate how, something more positive didn't come out of it. But I think it was positive on another note. So yes, that is a true story. And I guess there was a lot of friction there with the BFRO that had come in. I know Matt Moneymaker has done a lot of work on his site. His site was one of the first ones up. It has brought a lot of awareness to the topic. I can totally, get that. So I don't know, I wasn't there, so I really can't say yes or no about anything. So, it's just unfortunate that they had to kill him, but it was coming around and banging on their house, scaring the family members, and then that happened. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, if they were protecting themselves, some people said that they asked for it, but I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. Again, I wasn't there. These are upstanding people. So anyway, as far as that whole topic goes, I was there writing like all the time. I have had some things happen to me where I told you we had gone up riding and we were with a group of people, and sometimes some of us would stay back, and like my horse was almost a perfect horse where anyone could ride, and I looked high and low for this horse because I had an equestrian accident, I think in 1997, and I refused to get back on another horse. I was dragged by a horse and I had to roll under I broke my foot, and yeah, it was this horrible experience. So it took me a long time to find my horse, like maybe 6 months. And my husband would bring home a horse that he thought would be good for me, which it doesn't work like that. You have to find your own horse to ride. You have to you have to find the animal that's right for you. Anyone who rides might tell you that. So we were up there in October, and my aunt had called me in. That was when she had said, hey, you don't need to be riding up here. Well, actually, I don't know what month it was, but October is when we would go up there riding as a group. So I did not go. I said I would stay back, and I took my horse up this one way, and I think it was JJ, the horse that I found, and we went up, me and my dog, who was part coyote, a really, really good dog. She was walking next to me, and then I got to the top of this hill, and I don't know what happened. I just smelled like this smell, and then my horse's flank started ticking, which clearly is something is happening. He whipped around, and my dog just took off down over logs. And when I got down to camp, I mean, I just let him run, and he took me back to camp. And there was this Choctaw, I think it was Choctaw, person that was there. And I did not know who they were, but I remember that he said something to me, and I think that we took my horse down into the creek, if I'm correct. That was a crazy day. My horse was fine eventually, but so that is why I don't know about, like, if they're messing with the horses with their manes and tails, because I've seen that up while we're camping. When we have tied our horses up, like, I've seen their manes like right outside, because we had this big horse trailer, so we would sleep in the horse trailer, and the horses were tied up right there in the back. And I would wake up, and there would be footprints, and I'm like, okay, I didn't hear a sound. And then another time I was camping with, not with a group, it was just me and my husband. And I don't know if we had our horses. No, we did not. So it was my husband and me and my older son. My younger son wasn't born yet. So we were in our tent, and my husband always has a big rifle and a pistol or something. So we were asleep at night, and I was on a cot. We only had one cot. I'll never forget this. Around midnight, I could hear the howls. And it started like at 2 o'clock. And then later, like at 2 hours later, it was like at 6 o'clock. And then I sat straight up in bed because they came that close. They were howling. And my husband, who is not into this topic, but he does believe, he just doesn't care to talk about it. He doesn't go out with me researching. He has heard things, and he has had a visual, what I believe, which I will tell you because it actually happened there in Southeast Oklahoma. And I will tell you that after, because I was pregnant in 2002. So this night while we were camping, this was in the earlier 2000s, I had already been researching, and they started going off. So I knew exactly what was happening, but then I noticed that they were surrounding us, but not aggressively, just like, hey, we're here, but still it was freaking me out a little bit. And at one point, my husband sat straight up, and he got out of the tent, and he opened up the truck because our truck was going, it was dinging, it was going ding, ding, ding. And he pulled out his big rifle, and, I could hear him like, check it. And then he closed the door, and he was standing out there for a little bit. And then I didn't say anything. Then he came back to bed, and I got no sleep that night. And then it was 6 a.m. and I think it was still dark, and or it was getting like daybreak, and I could hear them like that was the final. All night long they were going off. I got no sleep that night, and I remember falling asleep around 6 or 6:30 a.m. and I didn't wake up till like 9 because I remember it was sunshiny, and I was like, oh my gosh. I looked at the time. I will never forget that night. Now, there was no visual that night, but I know what those sounds are. I mean, that was the typical siren sound, howls, going and circling us all night long. They never came in too close. And then eventually they were off in the distance, and it was daybreak, and that was that. And I was done. That was it. I was not going to go back there. I think that this was before the Honobia incident. Another time when we were there, I had to go get my inhaler, and I think where we parked, I had to hike through the woods a little bit. And I don't know why that is, because normally we'll park like where we set up camp, but I remember I had to hike through the woods to get my inhaler from my truck. And I think we had our horses there that time. And something was following me in the woods, like flanking me. I stopped, it stopped, and I knew exactly what was happening, because by this time I was deep into research, and I wasn't too afraid, I think. I really don't remember, but something was definitely there. There was no visual, but I could feel something was there. I could hear it, something walking next to me. And I opened up my truck, I got my inhaler, and I walked back to camp. But I don't think that they followed me back. I don't remember. But I know that when I did go to my truck, that I was hearing noises. So I've had many different encounters there. And I did reach out to one of the brothers, and I said, hey, my aunt knows your family. But at that time, it was very raw, and they were not even open. He didn't know me. And so he wasn't exactly receptive to me wanting to talk to him. And I totally get it. So I think it was later that we were able to message back and forth. And I said, hey, my aunt knows your family. And I said, my aunt, she's a broker here in Talihina. And so, she completely said this is true. And so they just had a bad receptive to it, I think, in my opinion, even though the BFRO did do a pretty good report. But I don't think that, obviously they don't, this family was not happy with, or at least I know one of the brother that I know was not happy. So it's not like we're close friends or anything, but I do know that, that is how they felt. Or, I can't speak for them, but that did, have a very unsettling feeling with me. So those are some of the encounters in Southeast Oklahoma. Another time, this is the last. I forgot. I was going to tell you my husband's encounter. So in 2002, I got pregnant, and my husband left East Texas with 2 friends and hauled our horses up to Southeast Oklahoma. I stayed home. I couldn't ride. I was bigger than a house. I think I was like 8 months pregnant. And I had just come back from a research trip, and there's no way. So they were riding this pathway, and then the path went to the trail went to the left. And when it curved to the left, our 2 friends were ahead, and then my husband was last. And then there was like a fire break that went straight up in the mountain. And when he went around the curve, something was standing there on 2 legs. I remember he said he could see it there standing. He said it was not a bear, and it wasn't a deer, and it was black and white. I think it was gray, or I totally forgot about the color. But he saw what he saw. He didn't say it looked like a Sasquatch. He didn't even mention the word. But what happened is that I stayed home, and that when they returned home, our friend Joe came in the house, and he said, "Hey, something happened. Your husband saw something." And so my husband told me the story, but he said, "I'm going to tell you this one time," because he knew I was going to get excited, because I wanted him to have the encounter, because I was going out so much and with his schedule being active duty military, I was obsessive about the topic starting out. So he was not exactly happy with me, and So his outlook on this, he was very annoyed. He really doesn't, to this day, really care to talk about the topic, even though all these things have happened. So my husband did have that encounter. He told me the story, and I wrote it down, and that was basically his encounter. Another time we were out somewhere in East Texas. It was not Southeast Oklahoma. As far as Southeast Oklahoma goes, I spent so much time there writing and just camping there and going to visit family and having multiple different experiences. Like I said, an encounter doesn't necessarily include a visual. I've heard every single sound there. One time we were there with the group, and at nighttime there was like 80 of us there. And I don't know what year this was, but it had to have been sometime from 99 to 2003. So this one night, we were all playing music. Somebody was playing their guitar, and then we would play games. And there was this one guy who would give me so much, he would give me such a hard time about the topic. So I was like, okay, well, I'll show you. So because we were playing this game, and there was a question that involved Sasquatch, and of course I raised my hand and I said the answer. And then, some of the guys were giving me a hard time, but this one guy just rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't remember what his name was. But later that night, I did make some calls. I don't do that today. Not really. But at that time, again, my mentality was that they were flesh and blood only, and they were something, not necessarily an ape, but they were some type of species. So when we were in bed later that night, I think I had made a call earlier, and then it was sometime in the early morning that you could hear them coming in. We were sleeping in the gooseneck of our horse trailer, and you could hear them coming in. They were shrieking, and they got closer, and then people came out of their tents. I think it was close to dawn, and I was like, oh my God, but I hope I didn't do that. My husband looked at me, and then from that point on, he said, would we go camping? No Bigfooting stuff. So on some days, we would ride like 50 of us would ride, and there would be a Jeep in the back with drinks and food. And some days I would ride like 30 miles or 35 miles. And then I would stay back at camp so someone else could use my horse. And then, I would stay with my child, and I would help watch other children possibly. So I've spent a ton of time up there, and this is before that area even became, like famous or like it is today. So my husband had that encounter, and so I was really, really happy. Now, going back to the Big Thicket, we would trailer our horses there, me and him, and we would take our horse trailer. We would sleep inside the gooseneck. Our horse trailer was like 30 feet long, and by this time I had done a ton. I mean, I had spent thousands of hours out in the woods. I had seen it all, done it all. I had seen all kinds of structures, teepees, big teepees. In East Texas, we would find a lot of small teepees. Like I don't even see that up in North Idaho where I live now. But in East Texas, we would, like this one day, we found a whole bunch of small teepees, like maybe 2 feet high. And they were destroyed the next day. And I think someone had gone to talk to one of the park rangers. I could be wrong, but I didn't go talk with the park ranger. But the teepees were like destroyed the next day, because I remember people went to go look to research, because there were other things that had been found also. I don't know if it was a trackway or prints, or if there was some other interesting structures, but they had gone back to this area, and they did discover where a lot of this stuff had been destroyed. Who did it? We don't know. I think there were some footprints that had been like scratched out. Very, very interesting. I spent a lot of time in the Sam Houston National Forest as well. But Boykin Springs is, for some reason, I remember that area quite a bit, because that's where I had that encounter where I was frozen. And I didn't go back into the woods for a while. This one trip, we went somewhere. I don't remember where we went, but me and my husband went. We took both of our horses, my horse JJ, my husband had a thoroughbred, and we got there in the evening time, and he made a fire. I said, "Hey, can you make a fire?" I think it was fall, because it was a little chilly. And he said, "Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like we're going to stay out here and enjoy it." Because I was really bad about, okay, I'm going to bed. But there was always people there to hang out with them, to enjoy the fire. But this night he had made the fire, and we were sitting around. I was laying against my saddle. Our horses had been tied up in the back of the trailer. They had been fed, watered, everything. They were tied up in the back of the trailer, and it was dark. And all of a sudden, I hear the most beautiful choir of, I hate to say a howl, because that sounds animalistic, but it was with human components to it. And when I say human components, because it sounded different octaves, they were going, I can't even mimic it to you, but let me just say, it's like the siren sound, which on different octaves. And you could tell which one was more male, and then you could hear the feminine ones. And let me tell you what, we were in the middle of the forest. I don't know what group of choir beings would be out there, but I could tell you one thing, it wasn't humans, or at least it's really hard to describe. But I looked at my husband, and I said, "What the heck is that?" He goes, "Oh my God, are you serious?" I was like, "Listen." He's like, "What? Who cares?" Because he knew what was coming. I was going to get scared. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, I said, "Well, okay, no, I'm good. I'm going inside." It was dark. The fire was roaring, and it was big. He stayed outside for a little bit. I did open the door so I could enjoy the fire. and he had his pistol out, so I wouldn't be afraid. Like, I look back now and I just roll my eyes thinking, golly, what you know now. So that choir sound went until sometime in the morning, because I know I fell asleep. I wasn't so scared that I said, let's go. So the next day when we woke up, our horses were gone. And let me tell you what, they were tied up with good knots. Both of them were gone. And my husband went to get them. I think a truck passed by and picked them up, and he came back. The lead ropes were still on them. He brought JJ and Isla back. Isla is his thoroughbred. And I thought, how did that happen? So we rode for the rest of the day, and I remember feeling like I was never alone. I was always in back of my husband. I don't know why. He always went first, probably because there was a lot of like down trees, and so it was kind of hard. In fact, it was annoying. It was hard to ride because we would try to take like trails, and then they would end because the forest was trashed, or we had to get back on the main logging road. And in East Texas, that red dirt, let me tell you what, I love that red dirt. I love East Texas. It will always be a part of me. But on this night, the next day, I didn't even bring it up. I knew better, and we went home. But I will never forget that night. That's just one of many different encounters that I've had just there in East Texas. So the year 2003 came, and my husband had put in a request, and his unit that he was in, he did retention and recruiting. My husband had taken a break from after Clinton was in office in 90, after Desert Storm. He took off like 6 years, so he got back in 98. And then that was when he was a recruiter, I think, for like a year or two. And then we wanted to move to Montana. We took a trip to Montana, and we hauled our horses, I think like in 2002. And we went to Augusta, Montana. There's this ranch out there called Sun Canyon Lodge. And my husband helped some of the wranglers take some of the supplies out to the backcountry, because he's a good horseman, and so they knew us there. I think we had gone like the second time. So on this trip, he went riding, and he helped take some of the supplies. I stayed back with my son. I'm trying to think if my younger son was born. I don't think he was born. In fact, I might have been pregnant. So we we loved Montana. So he put in a request to move to Montana, or however it works. There was nothing available in Montana, and he got his orders to go to North Idaho. So he was active guard reserve. So anyone who knows what AGR is, he was over the motor pool of this unit in North Idaho. It's not there anymore. They renamed it. So I did not know anything about North Idaho. And I had been researching 5 or 6 years. And I had seen it all, heard it all, had some encounters. My mentality, again, is that they are flesh and blood. I never had any kind of paranormal event happen. One other thing I would notice is that when some of us females were together, we used to hear like a cooing noise, like a woo, woo, coming from the woods. And this was mainly when there was females around. And I always picked up that was a female doing it. Now, did I see anything? No. A lot of people say, well, did you have a visual? How do you know it was a female? Well, because I sensed it. Well, that doesn't prove anything. Well, that doesn't matter, because I don't care what you believe. I'm not here to prove anything, even though at that time I felt like any time I described something that I had to provide proof, because that's the mentality of a lot of the whole Sasquatch field today. A lot of people feel like whatever they bring to the table, they have to back it up, which in some instances you do. But it was just very, very strange to have all these encounters and what my mentality was. And so when we moved to North Idaho, and after, we bought this house, my younger son was 1 year old and he was very sick. He was hospitalized and I went part-time. The Children's Medical Center was down the road from my office, and my husband was, he had just got to North Idaho, and he called me and he said, I'm in Wallace, Idaho. You're not going to believe this. It is snowing. I'm on the pass. I'm like, ooh, yeah. But he loves all that. He loves the snow. He loves the cold, not me. So I was really stressed out because I had to pack. I had to get the horses ready, get the coggins ready, had to have them shoed. And I had a lot of mixed feelings because I didn't really want to be a military wife, but my husband had spent years in and he wanted to retire. So I wanted to support him. My own dad, who was Navy, said, this is a good thing. You should go. This will be, if he retires, that income will be good to have down the road. So I was like, okay. So he got his orders not to Montana, but to North Idaho. Then we went through the whole thing of him finding a house, which he did. And he called me in 2004 in March, and he said, we got it, but you're not going to believe this. So I had gone part-time at my job now, and I said, what? He said, the mountain that is in front of our home is Hoodoo Mountain, Hoodoo. I'm like, really? That's like a little unsettling, because we have always, when we would take trips, we would see the names of places. Well, it was named that for a reason. Devil's Reservoir. Why is it named Devil Reservoir? There is a place not too far down the road, leaving Utah here where I'm at, and there's a place that's Devil's something Reservoir. So every time I pass that, I think, well, why is that called that? So I have always believed most of the time places like a mountain or a creek or something named like that, not a street necessarily, but a place like a mountain, like I said. So I said, you're kidding me. The place is called Hoodoo. And then he said, yes. So he got the paperwork and everything to our place, the keys and everything. And the guy who had built it was not done cleaning up some of the stuff outside. And my husband said, that's totally fine. We'll get it. So the real estate agent 2 days later called my husband and said, hey, somebody wants to make an offer on your house. And it was like $60,000 more than what we bought it. And the other real estate agent said, I didn't see this house on the MLS. And I'm like, well, that's weird, because when I was in my office and I did a search for it, I couldn't find it either. So I had my husband send me pictures because I couldn't find it on the MLS, but it was there. So I just find that really weird that this house never sold until we bought it. And I can honestly tell you that was meant to be. I was meant to go there to have lived this last 20 years on this property and everything that has happened to us. I will never forget that. There was no explanation why these other real estate people could not see this house on the MLS. But when it was closed, guess what? It popped up. When the deal was done, it was showing up on the MLS, like shut the front door. For real? That still gives me goosebumps. So this person made an offer. I mean, my husband called me. I'm like, well, you can't. We need a place to live, because there was no place. Everything was getting so expensive. We got our house for 6 acres and a beautiful brand new home, no shop, for under $150,000. And I'm telling you what, this was some weird stuff. I got everything ready. My husband came down in May or June, loaded up the 3 horses, which was my quarter horse JJ, the horse that was very tame, and then my husband's thoroughbred. She was over 16 hands, maybe 17. She was a big horse. She was Isla. And then we had a Palomino quarter horse, we named her Philly. We never really named her anything, so Philly just stuck because when we got her, she was a filly. So that name kind of just stuck. So it took us 4 days to go up there, and my younger son, like I said, he was 18 months at this time, and he had been really sick from January until like April with this weird, I think they called it the rotavirus. I don't remember. But we had 3 dogs with us, 2 or 3 dogs, and I had a Isuzu Amigo that a friend of my husband's drove up to North Idaho, and then my husband, of course, hauled our horses up that way, and the military had come and packed up everything. And I will never forget those 4 days traveling, how patriotic people were at that time. And, we stopped like in Colorado. I think we stopped in Kansas the first night. Then we stopped in maybe Colorado. Then we stopped in maybe Wyoming at one time, and then Montana. And people were just really, really nice. We would board our horses and then stay at a local hotel, and people were just really, really nice and patriotic. When we got over the Montana passes, I just could not believe how beautiful it was. I had gone to Augusta, Montana, but going over I-90 on these passes, my whole body just got like, wow, this is so beautiful. When we got into Coeur d'Alene, I will never forget Coeur d'Alene Lake. It is so beautiful. And I asked my husband, well, how much further? He said about another 45 minutes. I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So we got to our road, and I remember looking up the mountain, and he said, that's hoodoo. I'm like, that's really creepy. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, maybe we can see why it's called that. So my husband had lived there for a couple of months, maybe 2 months or a month and a half in the house, trying to get ready before, he drove back down to Texas to come and get us. So when we went down our road, and he said, okay, our property starts here. I could not believe it, because everything around us is wooded. And 2 of the properties across the street were all empty. And then the property in front, across the street from me, was also empty. We pulled into our driveway. And the first thing I saw was these bent over trees. And I, as a researcher, I started thinking again like that. Now, I had told everybody that I was going to be done researching, and there I went, started, we stopped our truck and we got down and we got our horses down. And I remember walking around the front yard, and I thought, wow, this is going to be incredible. But subconsciously, I had told myself that I was going to be done researching. But already, weeks after that, I found myself feeding the horses because my husband would leave early in the morning. The military came, dropped our furniture off, and I would get up really early in the morning to feed the horses, and then my husband would leave early, and I would just spend time walking my woods. My horses would follow me. We had a fence that we put up really quick, and I just noticed a lot of different things, a ton of different structures. There was 2 teepees. I would put the horses up, and in this one area where we had built a corral where we would, like if they would get out, we would put them in this one area because our fence was kind of crappy. And it really needed to be fixed because my husband and his friend built it really fast. So it needed some tightening up, and it needed some, better. It needed we needed hot wire up because my horses got out a couple of times. So it's 2004. I'm feeding my horses out there one morning, and my older son is, I think, 8 or 9. So I think it was 2004, 2005. And I found footprints. close to where I feed and water the horses. And my heart stopped, and I looked down. And I remember there was only like 1.5 prints, because my place is wooded, so there's a ton of pine needles that fall everywhere. So, the forest floor is just filled with years and years of just pine needles that have accumulated, and pine comes in. So, and this also was outside of the fence. The horses were on the other side of the fence. I'm walking to the fence to feed them, and I see these tracks. I'm like, what the heck? And I called my son out, my older son, John, and he came out, and I showed him. He's like, wow, tracks. So I got this bucket, and I covered the track. I don't know why I did that. And then we went inside. And then I think a couple of days later, I removed the bucket, and it rained. I didn't cast it. I didn't want to cast it. I had no desire. I never have really gotten into casting. I've done a couple, but I never really I guess I really never perfected it. And it just wasn't my thing. And I just think that's kind of weird that I never really wanted to learn that more. So after that, there was a series of events that happened. I would find things on the porch. My husband would sit out on our front. I have a front running porch. You could see through our woods across the street. There's Hoodoo Mountain. Now, when I say my street is a logging road. It's not like a county road. There's nothing out there. At that time, I had few neighbors. I mean, there was people who lived 5 acres over, but the property across the street was 10 acres. It was empty. The property left of that was empty. There was a lot of properties around me that were empty. So things started happening over time. Then when I heard a roar off the mountain, and then that became a normal thing. And then my children would have encounters. Well, my older son had an encounter, and my younger son had some encounters. But we're talking 20 years here. So, I mean, definitely I can't get all of that in one show.
I thought the wild stuff was going to be in Oklahoma, but it feels like things just started to really happen when you moved to this place in Idaho, which is, I've talked to people about Northern Idaho. It's one of the places I really have no desire to go to, just because it can get very aggressive there. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to.
A few people. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to come back to that.
Okay.
We'll have to come back to that because I find that interesting. So the years kind of flew by. I kind of just started researching. My older son, I think. Okay, so my husband was Army. I did family support for like a year, and then they got called to go to Iraq. I mean, all this stuff happened. So I have to timeline things, and I can't tell you every single story. So I will try to stay on course of what happened and how my journey started changing. So one thing that some of my colleagues did in East Texas, they went to what we called, I think it was Dead End Road, which is at Boykin Springs. And it used to be secret. It's not anymore, but I mean, whatever. So I was not there, but one of my friends was there with another female and some other people. I don't know. I just know these two people that were there. And they parked at this one area. And, at that time, you would have a tape recorder and then a microphone attached to it, like back in the day. That was how we recorded. So they were parked at this dead end road. And I think one of the gals made a distressed call. And what happened afterwards would go down in history. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say her name because I used to research with her, and she is smart. And you've heard of Night Callers Radio?
Absolutely. I'm pretty good friends with Lauren.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Her mom, Lori, and me used to research together back in the day.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. Yes,
Okay.
but I don't like to throw people's names around because, I have no idea what people think of me these days. And so anyway, so on this one night, Lori recorded these. You know what? Lauren even did a show about it. And I will try to go back, and if I know the show, she talks about that night Lori sat there. So basically, one of the gals, the other girl, Crystal, made a call. I don't know if it was just a distress call, but Lauren can tell you the story really well. And so what happened was that you could hear them from far away. They were coming, and they came in really quick and really fast. And I mean, you could hear, and it was like I said, I'm going to say choir, which is a group of something coming in, and you can hear them going, and then you could hear one go, like the alpha male or female. It was very distinct. And I was not there that night, but that happened, and I don't remember the whole story. But so now I'm up in Idaho. It's October of 2004. My neighbor who had an interest in this topic went up with me, and I said, hey, I'm going to do something. I went up Hoodoo Mountain. I don't know how far I went up, and I backed my car in so that I could leave pretty quick. And, that's one of the things I learned from one of these guys is, you always back up. Like if you have to leave, you'll be ready to leave instead of having to back up like a dummy and be ready.
Right.
So I parked, we got out. I made what I think was an attempt at a distressed call. And we were there for maybe 10 minutes, but my friend was really restless and she was ready to hear something. And she said, well, are we going to hear anything? I said, Susan, I don't know. Let's see what happens. She was kind of annoying me. So I said, okay, let's go over here. We got back in my vehicle and we went down the mountain. Now, I had a Suzuki Amigo. It was not four-wheel drive. So I really needed a four-wheel drive to go up to some of these other places in the mountain. But it worked for, it wasn't snowing yet or anything. So I came back down the mountain. I went to the other side of the mountain and I parked in this one area that I still frequent today. And I made another call. Well, this time, within a couple of minutes, you could hear them all coming from where we were at. And you could hear them all coming. And then, just like what happened to Lori in East Texas, now, they didn't go park and then move somewhere else and park again. I don't think so. But the sound of what happened is just like what happened over there. And you could hear them coming. Then you could hear the one. I freaked myself out because my friend was like, oh my, so she freaked me out. I think I was trying to record, but I didn't get it. And of course I wasn't really good at that and I didn't have a lot of equipment. So, I know that I was standing outside and I closed my door and I took off. That was it. I started my car. I took off down the road and, I don't know if I went home or if I took a different route and then looped back home. And I dropped her off and she was just looked at me. Her eyes were bigger than, owl's eyes. And she just couldn't, she goes, I can't believe we experienced that. Because she had heard them howl on numerous nights. So the next day when I woke up, there was something on my front porch. I think it was a rock or something. I can't remember, but I was like, this is weird. Plus my dog was sniffing it. So after that point, it was on like Donkey Kong. I was actively researching, but I wasn't going out to places purposely. Word had got out and there was a report there in Ethel, Idaho, which is just down the road from me. This officer had an encounter. He was called out on a report of something that happened there. I ended up talking to him about that event. And, I've worked with people. These other people called me from Priest Lake and they said, hey, we bought this cabin. Something is coming up to our house and hitting it because the word got out, what was going on. These people had bought a cabin. They were living in it by Priest Lake and they were having these weird encounters where something was slapping the house, something was getting the garbage. And so they got my phone number somehow, and they said, what do we do? And I said, well, I mean, I'm no like expert or anything like that, but it's been my experience from some of these, some other people I've talked with. And I had even reached out to some other people, and it was their suggestion to tell them to, one, I had found out that the prior people that had lived there was habituating the Sasquatch out there. Now, these people live close. Yeah.
Oh, man.
And then they moved.
And they didn't tell the people that bought it.
No. And so I'm like, so they got my number. I think there was more involved because someone, I don't know if they found footprints. And so somehow they got my phone number, and I was like, okay, well, you know, now I had young children at the time, so I couldn't just hop in my car and go because that wasn't my main priority. A lot of stuff is going on with the military, and look, I really could have cared less, I'll be honest with you. And it was like 45 minutes, maybe half an hour away, Peaks Lake, from where I live. So I told them over the phone, listen, this is, you know, don't feed them. And they said, we're not. And that was when I found out that, well, the prior people had been doing something. So I'm like, okay, so this is what you do. You put out some lights around the place, like put one, like, I hate to tell you this, but try to put out like 10 lights because their house is pretty big. And I was trying to see on a map, like what was happening. And at that time, the smartphones, 2003, were not exactly that great, like how they are today. Like, here, I'll send you a picture. You know, people are still texting all those old phones. So they never called me back. I told them, don't be feeding them. And then I don't know if I said, well, maybe you can go out there and take, like if you cook something, take something further out, like past the light, and say, you know, this is our, like, you know, like we are not the old people that lived here. You know, please stop, you know, staring at us. Please stop. Like, just talk to the woods, talk to them. I don't know if I told that to them or if I was going to, and I didn't. I don't remember. But like, people would call me with stuff like that. And meanwhile, I'm at my own home having things happen. So the year is 2005. So those people never call me back. But I've always wondered about those people. So it's 2005. I've been there like a year, and all these things have happened. That thing on the mountain, I'll never forget that. They would bring me gifts on my front porch, or on my way to where I would feed the horses. They would play with our family, where they would screech out in the backwoods or in the neighboring woods. They would break limbs. But I never saw anything. I never saw anything at all. I think one day I was sitting on the couch and my husband was gone for the weekend, because it was they all gather for the weekend, the monthly guys. Even though my husband was active guard reserve, he was there full time. The guys at the unit were not there like every single day. They would meet up once a month. So he was gone that weekend, and it was really, really, really bad timing. My husband's horse got colic, and she was rolling on the ground, and I didn't know what to do because I had a 2-year-old, and I couldn't like walk the horse. So my other neighbor came, and we tried to get a hold of my husband. So our vet, I love my vet. This is how I met this guy, a vet in town. He came out, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? Because again, I'm not working, you know, we have to like, you know, budget every little thing. I can't just go splurge money like I used to in Dallas. So my neighbor was walking Isla and walking her, and she got a Banamine shot from the vet, and he did some other things. And then the next day he left me with another Banamine shot to give her, and my husband came home, and she started colicking again. So the vet came out again, and then on the third day she was blown up, and it was bad. She would need surgery. It would be $7,000. I couldn't afford that. So my husband gave her up to the town over because they would give the surgery, but we would have to give up ownership of the horse. But I think because my husband was a soldier, that they were going to try to fix her and then work something out with us. But Isla died at the vet's office. And let me tell you what, you want to hear a grown man cry? I will never forget that, because my horse, these animals, they know. And they were not okay for a couple of days. They hung their heads. There was something in the air. And I heard some cooing from the back of the woods. And I just thought, oh my gosh. Now, again, all of this is not unusual, the things I'm hearing in the woods. So that was a really, really hard time. My husband never bought a horse after that. He just rode mine, and I would ride Philly, because JJ, my horse, was a big horse, like 16 hands. He got bigger than what I expected. So, talking about the cooing, my husband's unit got called to Iraq one day. We came home. We were at the base, which is in Airway Heights, outside of Spokane, Washington, because if you look on a map, you'll see the top of Idaho, Spokane, Washington, and then right across on the Idaho border by Spirit Lake, Idaho. That's where I live, in the town of Blanchard, at the bottom of Hoodoo Mountain. So we came home and my phone rang. Now, my best friend to this day, I had met her around that time. She was the first sergeant's wife. And so me and her have remained friends all these years. But on this day, my husband didn't go to work. I think he took off and we went to the base for something. So my husband did not work at the base. He worked at a unit. But we did go to the base. I think we were shopping. Anyway, we came home and my phone rang. It was my friend. And she goes, "Hey, so how do you feel?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well," she realized I didn't know what she was talking about. She said, "It's official." And I remember my stomach, that feeling in my stomach. I knew what she was talking about. They were going to Iraq. I said, "What?" I said, "He didn't go to work today. We went to the base. He took off." And she goes, "Okay, well, they're going, and Scott needs to talk to your husband, because they are doing the phone chain thing." And my husband had heard, and he came in, and I remember I didn't slam the cabinet. I was trying to keep it together. I closed the cabinet. I don't know why I get emotional when I talk about this story. So stupid. But anyway, probably because being a military wife, you just have to understand that feeling never goes away. That feeling of dread. They're going to Iraq. They're going to war. Here I am in this house in North Idaho that I refused to attach myself to, because I just couldn't. I don't know why. In my mind, I was going back to Texas. So I gave my husband the phone, and I closed the door. And, to him, it's another day at the office. He already knew what the phone call was about. And I just said, "I'm going to go feed the horses." It was dark. I handed him the phone. The kids were in the other room. They're young. My youngest was, I think, 2 or 3. And my oldest, again, is 8 or 9. So I went outside my backyard. I have a backyard, but it's all wooded. And our barn was a little off to the right. And it's very, very dark. The light in our backyard really didn't set off a good distance of light. And I could barely see. I went to go to water, check on the horses. And I remember I was standing there, and I fed the horses, and I was looking at them, and they were fine. I got to a point where I would watch my animals and their behavior, and I would see my horses' mane and tail, and they were fine. So the theory of if something looked like they had been messed with their mane and tails, which was quite often when I had them in North Idaho, it didn't. For some reason, I came to a point where I was fine. Yeah, I don't know. I can't do that. So they were fine. They weren't acting weird or traumatized. So I just kind of stopped thinking about it. And I walked behind my barn, and I just tried to collect myself. And I remember I was crying a little bit, and I heard the cooing from the back of the woods, and I heard, "Ooh," and I remember I hopped up on my legs, on my feet, and I ran to the back, like to the back porch, and my husband had hung up the phone, and then I heard a roar off the mountain, which at that time was not a big deal, and then I heard the female, and I knew it was the female. She left. I could hear her leaving, and I went inside the house, and I wanted to talk to my husband about what was going on, but the timing wasn't right. So the next 6 months, the colonel would tell me, oh, he's going to Iraq. But see, when you're ADR, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going, because my husband's job was to get the truth ready of the motor pool, and then he would possibly be called to somewhere else. So at that time, he said, I might not go. So we put our house up for sale, and we said, if it sells, it sells. And I didn't know if he was going to Iraq or not. I had no idea. I was a hot mess. I didn't feel like I could plan anything, like where are we going? And then he said, if it doesn't sell, then you'll be okay to stay here. And I said, well, I think I'm going to call my mother, or maybe your mother could come and stay with us. So in the end, he got transferred to West Virginia, and our house stayed empty. Our neighbors watched it, and we were gone to West Virginia for a year, and then we came back. And I do have some stories for West Virginia, because I lived off the Greenbrier River, and I lived in a house in the woods for a year, and I would go out to the water there, and I would sit, and I would not let the kids go to the water because, well, one, I didn't want them falling in and going with the rapids, because where we lived there, the Greenbrier River had a ton of rapids. So we had very strict rules. My older son was 10, and my younger son was 3 at this time. So that year passed pretty quickly, and my husband retired, and then we came back to North Idaho, basically, and then he retired. But what happened after that, things started to really, really ramp up, because we had been gone a year, and life got back to normal. I started researching again. When I say researching, I mean I spent time up on my mountain, up at Priest Lake. And my husband was not happy, though, when I say a year went by really fast. It did, but he wanted to be with his guys over there in Iraq or Afghanistan. I can't remember where they went, because he didn't go. I was just happy he didn't go, and that was a hard year to live with him, because he kind of was not all there. He didn't want to be there. I knew he wanted to be over there overseas, but we did eventually come back to Idaho, and it was 2007. He retired. The economy, 2008, took a tank, as we all know. My older son, his birthday is in April. It is still cold in April, in the months of April. He wanted to have some friends over to camp out. My in-laws were staying with us. So now it's 2007, and I was hearing the same things over. We still had our horses. My son had 2 or 3 friends camp out in the back of our property, and they had a fire. And the next day, they came in and they said they heard something walking around, and was it us? No, it wasn't us. And they thought we were playing a trick on them. So they did hear something heavy walking around at that time. So that's my older son's experience. And then he has friends here in the area where they have camped out. And I would hear other stories down the road that when they were camping out, they would hear things. And then I have a friend who has 60 acres, and her son is my son's, like, one of his best friends. So when they were growing up over the years, she said that they would be camping out, and they would come in and say, we heard something walking around. And then she would tell me stories where, now this is just a couple of acres over. Well, no, it's maybe a mile down the road. So they have 60 acres, and she had a ton of stories to tell me. When she moved there in the 80s, there was nothing out there, not my house, not any of that, the houses that are platted out now. And she said one day her husband was coming home from work, and you have to go down this road. There was nobody was out there, just them. And he saw something dark cross the road. And she said other times she would be home alone, or if the kids were small, she always carried a pistol around. She could hear them coming in when she would be outside hanging laundry. She could hear them. And she said, Cindy, I felt them. And then I noticed that it took her a little bit to open up to me. Now, she never had a visual, but she told me stories of she would do laundry and she would go outside and she could hear them, like she knew something was there. So, so my older son had that happen to him, I think like in 2007. And then over the years, my younger son, he's like another Daniel Boone. I think he was 12. He asked us if he could camp out with some other friends, which he did. We allowed him to camp out at the local lake there, which is on private property, but the locals are allowed to come in, but you have to like let them know. You can't just like the general public can't come in. So as long as people respected the land, these people's 3,000, 4,000 acres, then you could go onto their property and go to the lake or go hunting or whatever. But they're, so people there respected that because people wanted access to that. So my younger son was camping with some friends, and they took the four-wheelers out there. Well, you'd think that they would have came home or called us. I'm trying to think what year that was because I know we had cell phones. Yeah. So they did have a phone because they called. So they were out there camping, and then they heard something walking around in the shallow water, and then they heard something big being thrown into the shallow end of the water. It made a big splash. Because my son told me the next morning that because they called us because the four-wheelers had died because they heard this noise, and then they heard some more crunching in the shallow end, and it scared them. So they turned on the lights of the four-wheeler, and I think they called Fish and Game, or I don't know, but they called someone, not 911, but dispatch. They called somebody, but it was funny. I was like, why didn't you call us? Like, all we had to do was go down the road and come and get you. Well, they didn't call us, and my husband had to go help restart the four-wheeler, and they came home, and then we heard about the story. I'm like, oh my God, seriously, this is not okay. So by this time, I started working with some of the local tribes there. The Coeur d'Alene, I have friends in the Coeur d'Alene. I have very close family members I call my sisters in the Spokane tribe, the Colville Nation, the Kalispel. And one thing I have learned from them as my journey started changing is that you can talk to them, you can take back your property. There's a way to do this. You have to respect the forest people. And I always used to think, why are you calling the forest people? Because still at this time, I still had the mentality of flesh and blood. But I think subconsciously some other things had happened, which I would be outside and I heard my name being called from the woods one time. And there was nobody there. I would hear grunts, and there was nothing there. Footprints would just end. There wasn't necessarily a trackway. I had found 2 prints underneath my window where I sleep, and then eventually there was a path made that looped from the woods underneath my window where I sleep, and it looped back into the woods. That's a whole other crazy story. So now my son has had an encounter. My older son has had the one when they were camping in 2007, and then my younger son had this happen. And now I'm like, oh heck no. So I started to do a lot of research, like what can I do to get this under control? Because I was not happy with the situation. I was, like, this is crazy. So, and then I was experiencing these, I guess, paranormal things happening in the woods, and some other things had happened too. So this deer had died. This mama deer and this baby deer had died, and we were having a birthday party for my younger son. Here's another example. And all the kids were over, And his birthday is in January. So it's tons of snow outside. We're having like this little wiener fire, this hot dog roast out there, and it's snowing. It's kind of like, miserable, but of course the kids love it. And here comes this deer, this baby deer. Well, it's not a baby. It's young, and it has its tiny horns on. And I hate to say it, but we were giving it some food. I don't agree with that, but the locals around there were saying, hey, this deer is, it's walking around. So word kind of got out. So this deer that we named, I forgot what we named it. It came up and then it left. Well, sometime later that year, my neighbor called and I said, yeah, I'll come and get it. I was going to go to her house. And when I opened up my door, it was turning it was dusk. It was going to be dark. It was evening time. And my neighbor lived next door to me, like 2 acres down. And they also had like 5.5 acres. I was going to walk through the woods, but I passed by the horse trailer and the horse trailer started rocking. And I thought, oh, there's an animal in there. And I thought, well, maybe it was that deer. But how is it going to get in there? How is any animal going to get in there? Because it's a 2-stall horse trailer and the door is really high. But hey, you just never know. So then what ended up happening was I hopped up on the horse trailer and I looked inside and it was empty. And I fell to my knees and I started praying because at this time now I knew it was some kind of spirit. Something was trying to get my attention. And I was raised very strictly in the Catholic world that you don't mess with that. And on top of everything else that had been happening, my name being called, there's nothing there, finding gifts. So now at this point, I was finding feathers like, in weird patterns out in the woods. Things would go missing, like a bag of horse feed. It would be like at the end of the property. Tools, bikes would be, things were, like a lot of stuff is happening. So at this point now, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know, like, okay, so now we're talking about paranormal stuff. So I started praying and I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, depart. And I put my hands up and I meant it, but I was terrified. And I got up and I went to my neighbor's house and she goes, you look like you've seen, like, what happened? And so I told her, and then I don't know. I think she walked back with me or she drove me home. I refused to walk home. It was dark. There was no way because I was supposed to go there and pick up, I think it was a spice or something, and then I was going to go home. But no, it's dark. And she's like, I don't know, girl. And so she drove me home and, there was nothing there. And then someone eventually caught that deer because it was becoming a problem. It was, becoming older and it was starting to harass some of the people and it was moved somewhere. But I never got any explanation for any of these things that were happening. And then one day I swear I heard like Indian chanting out in the woods, but it was nothing like anything like nowadays. I'm talking like ancient stuff. And then I just was feeling a lot of things and I was confused. I was, my children were going up into the mountains, riding their dirt bikes and things. And so my older son graduated school. He moved away. And so now it's just my younger son at home. And the year is 2017. Like, I left a lot of stuff out, but the year is 2017. And now I'm starting to think, okay, something is not right here. And again, I had been starting to work with some of the tribes there, and they would say, the forest people, you need to respect them. So, I was kind of starting to see their point of view. So I started audio recording, and I bought one of those cheap audios from Walmart. My husband had retired and he was a private investigator. So he was a private investigator for 10 years until I think up until like 2021 when he fully retired. So in 2017, he said, here's one, like, use this. And he showed me how to use it. I didn't even set up the date like an idiot because I never thought I would get anything, but I was hearing so many things. And, at that time, the smartphone, even in 2017, the smartphones I don't think I had one, or it wasn't that great. So I got an audio recorder and I started putting it out, and I started listening. And some of the things I got were really, really crazy. So from 2017 until current is what I really mainly plan to talk to you about. But I got them howling. I got them moaning, as in ceremony of a loss. My kids would walk with their friends down the road and they would hear these sounds, and they would take the four-wheelers, and I had to have rules with my younger son. He would take off on his dirt bike at the age of 12, 13, 14, because at that time our cell phones did not work up in the mountains, and he was always gone. He would come back and he would tell me a crazy story. Hey, Mom, I was up in the mountains and we stopped to take a break and to get a drink, and the trees were shaking, and they know probably what it could be. So they would get on their dirt bikes and leave. My son has had different stories like that. So I started catching different audios, and I became really mesmerized. But then May came around. Well, actually, May, it was Memorial Day. I worked for a friend 2 nights a week. I worked Monday and Fridays. And so this one Monday night, it was the Monday before Memorial Day. So now one of the properties next to me, a house had been built, and he was also ex-military, and he was married, and he's pretty much a recluse, but he would talk to us and we would talk to him. And, like I said, this is a big guy. He worked with the armory stuff, the tanks and all that. So, I came home on a Monday night, and my older son was asleep, and I walked in around 11:10, and my husband said, "Hey, is that you?" And he never calls out my name when I come home. He knows it's me because the dogs will come and greet me. They're not barking. He knows it's me. So my neighbor texted me, but I was really tired. I didn't read it. I would probably get like a glass of wine, or maybe a little fourth of a glass of wine, to go to sleep, because my mind, I'm super like ADD. My mind is going and going and going, and I would take care of these 2 kids, and I would have a lot of problems with them. Some friends of mine adopted these 2 children through the fostering system, and they would leave on Monday nights to go practice for a dart team. So I said I would work for them, plus it was extra money. So I came home this night, and I eventually went to bed. I didn't even read my neighbor's text. And the next morning, which was Tuesday, we were talking. My husband was getting ready to go to work, and my younger son was gone to school already. He said, "Oh, hey, something stopped the house last night." What? I said, "What?" And he said, "See, this is why I didn't want to tell you, because then you wouldn't have gone to sleep last night." I was like, "Okay, whoa. He said, "Last night, before you came home, something slapped the house." And he said, "Slapped." And I said, "Where?" He said, "Well, who knows?" I was laying down. It was enough for him to get the rifle. But again, the dogs were fine. He walked down the long hallway, opened up the sliding glass door, and looked outside. Nothing. The dogs were fine, so he's fine. Then I come home. It's the next morning. I run outside, and I go in back of the house, and again, underneath my bedroom window, where there was this pathway that had been started over the years. And he said he didn't really know where it came from. So I came to the front of the house, where is my running front porch. So I'm not on the porch. I'm standing in the front yard, and I'm looking for any kind of sign. And on the front of the house are handprints, and they are big, and they are oily. You could tell just by looking at it. And I run in the house, and I tell my husband, and he just looks at me again. He is not worried. He is not into this topic. He said, well, what did Ken have to say? I said, oh yeah, Ken texted us. And I read it, and it was a long text. He said, hey, heads up. My motion lights keep going off. Which normally it could be a deer or something, but he said they keep going off. And he said something else to that effect, to where it wasn't normal. He said his cats are hissing. They're not acting right. And they fed this cat that was feral. And he said his bird was going back and forth on the perch. He had a cockatiel. So he said, heads up, something is outside. So whatever was in my house went through the woods, which is maybe half an acre or an acre, over to his. His property is more wooded than mine. And I have walked all those woods, a ton of structures over there before they built that house. So now I'm reading his text, and I am starting to like, this is like too much. He said that he was in his bedroom around midnight, and his wife, who is a nurse, has to go to sleep early. But he's standing looking through his big bay window, or his big glass window that looks out to his driveway, which is a horseshoe driveway. And he said something was standing there on two legs, and it looked like haunches. Okay, what do you mean haunches? So he's saying this in a text. And I look at my husband, and I'm like, what the heck? So my husband leaves for work, and I said, where are you going? You're not going to leave me here, are you? He's like, oh, you'll be fine. So my husband goes to work, and I'm sitting in my kitchen. I call my friend who's a real estate agent. And I said, hey, how much can I get for my house? He's like, why do you want to sell? And I said, just how much can I get for my house? Call me back. And I ended up telling him what happened. Now, he had an encounter also, so he totally believed me. And he's like, wow, that's really cool. Can I come over? And I was like, yeah, sure. But he never came over. And so I went to my neighbors to talk to him, to ask him some questions. And he said that he saw this thing looking at him. It had pointy ears, and it had like backward, like haunches. Like that sounds like a dog man. I had never heard of a dog man until around that time. I'm like, okay, so how tall was it? And then he said it was like 7 or something, 8 feet. And I said, so what do you think it was? And he said, oh, it was a bear, of course. I said, oh, you think it was a bear. So he doesn't know anything what I do. He doesn't know I'm into Sasquatch. He doesn't know anything. I said, well, he said he slept with his pistol all night long. I said, well, if you knew it wasn't a human and it was a bear, why would you sleep with your pistol all night long? Because, like, that's not, like, I wouldn't sleep with a pistol. If it's a bear, I'm going to go back to sleep. Like, okay, there's a bear. That's no big deal. And he looked at me and he got really irritated. And I said, what I'm trying to say is, like, how about, like, do you think it could be like maybe like a Bigfoot? He looked at me like I was crazy. No, it wasn't a Bigfoot. Okay. I mean, I'm just going by your description. It's very tall. And it has these weird haunches. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So I went home, and my friend called me from the South, one of the guys I used to research with. And he basically told me, you'll be okay. You live there. Like, don't let them run you out, but stop giving them freaking attention. Now, again, this is a person who grew up with them, and his grandfather knew what they were, boogers. He told me to stop giving it attention, stop giving it energy. So my husband heard me tell him that I called a real estate agent, and I hung up the phone with my friend, and my husband said, we're not selling this house because of that reason. And I said, why not? Why can't we stay, like, in this area and just buy some more property, but no woods? Or let's just, he's like, we have horses. We can't just move. I said, well, okay, crap. He said, we're not moving. Like, where are we supposed to move to? He said, you get it together, because if we move, like, one, there's no place to move to. We can't afford it. And two, it's just like, it's not a good time to move. And he was serious about me not being able to research anymore, even though I was living on this property. But he was very serious about saying, get it together. And so I did. So I kind of just took a step back and I stopped paying attention to stuff. I mean, they were there. I knew that. I started audio recording, and then I was picking up sounds, like crazy audios. 2017 is when things started changing for me. I wanted answers. My son was camping by himself. So now I think he's 15 or 16. He's camping, and he asked us if he could camp in this one area, which is state land, and I said, absolutely not. You can go up on the mountain to the area where your dad knows in case something happens. We can only get to you by a four-wheeler, not even because we didn't have a Jeep like I have a Jeep today, but we have a big truck. There was no way this big truck is going to make it up there. At least I don't think so. But so he said a friend was supposed to meet him. So my son had a flatbed trailer where he built this tent on top of it. And it was very genius. He took all of his gear and he went to this location. And I said, okay, please, don't go to the other area. Well, the next day he came home and he walked through the door and his eyes were big. And he told me what happened to him. Well, one, he went to the area where we told him not to camp out. So he knew he was in trouble. He said, Mom, I was in my tent and I heard something heavy walking, but it wasn't like a bipedal. It was like bipedal walking side by side, but it was different. And then he said, it squeezed at me. I said, it squeezed at you? He said, yeah. And then it came around and he said he was really, really scared. And I said, well, then what happened? He said, well, it left. I said, it left, and why didn't you come home? He said, oh, I went to sleep. I was pulling my hair out. I was like, are you serious? Like, why'd you go over there? And I said, so what did you hear? He said, it sounded like a pterodactyl. I said, what? What the heck are you talking about? I was expecting him to say a Sasquatch. But it didn't. And to this day, we will pull up a YouTube video, play a pterodactyl sound, and it sounds just like that. So that's another encounter that he's had. My son has been chased by a person, thing that chased him on another time. This was, paranormal weird crap. Another night, this is right before he learned how to drive. These kids, I tell you what, they would put on their Carhartts, zip-up jackets, their hats, and he would and his friends would ride the four-wheelers to each other's homes. And we had rules, call me when you get there. And yes, I had to come to the point to where I had to be okay with this at some point because life doesn't stop. And we were not moving, and my son was active outdoors. He was up on the mountain. So I had to find some peace somewhere. And my husband flat out told me, you got to let the kid off the boob, Cindy. My husband's really crude when he... I was like, okay, right, fine.
Right.
So my son went to a friend's house one day, and it was nighttime. And I said, he said he was going to bring his friend home with them, and they had a PlayStation 2. Well, they stopped at the Grange, which is right by this property where they had this encounter. It was a full moon out. They were sitting on the swings. It was 9-something, and I remember looking at my phone thinking, okay, they haven't called me yet. Like, they said they would call because they wanted to come back home. And so what I would have done is I would have got in my truck and gone and met them at the bottom of the mountain where my son would have come out from. Now, the way he goes to this property, I still cannot believe that. He went through by this ranch, this lonely road. There's nothing there, just this lake, this property. There's 4,000 acres and state land all around. Then he has to go through state land. Then he comes out in a residential farming area. Then he has to cross this road and go up this other mountain. I'm like, oh my gosh. So they walk in the door. I don't know what time it is. It's late. I'm like, why didn't you call me? Like, I was like all worked up. And he said, Mom, we stopped at the Grange. I was going to call you. He said, sorry, I forgot. He said, but man, we were sitting there and I look up and, now my son did have a rifle. In fact, it might have been a shotgun. And he was 16 or 17. And I think he was 16. So up there, that's very normal. Again, probably some of these people, if they're hearing this, they're thinking, what kind of parent lets their kid? Well, I'm going to tell you what, our kids learned how to use the weapons and respect them. And he had a rifle with him, because they're out there. There's grizzly bears, there's mountain lions, there's bear. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there. So yes, he had a rifle, but I think it was a shotgun. Well, they were sitting at the Grange. They looked up. There's this road that crosses over this creek, and there's a bridge that looks old and rickety, like time had not touched it. So they're sitting on these swings, and they're looking at this bridge, and they see this person walking up. Now, it's wintertime where it's very, very cold out. This person has on, like, a hoodie and, like, pants, like sweats or jeans or I don't know, but they don't have a coat on. So they're, like, looking at this person, and they cross the bridge, and they stop, and they look over at my son and his friend. Now, my son they had parked the four-wheeler, they had got off, they had gone through the gate or around the gate, and they sat in the swings. So now they're looking at this person who is looking at them, and my son's friend, who is not exactly the sharpest tool in the toolbox, stood up and goes, yo, man, like, hey, what's up? And this guy puts out his hands and starts sprinting towards them. They both hop up, go around the gate, and they hop on the four-wheeler, and this person has crossed the field in speed lightning. And then when this person sees that they're going to take off down the road, the guy cuts off through the field, and then it comes to a T. And let me tell you what, this guy tried to grab them. This guy got so close that my son looked, and he said he had a black face. There was no face there, Mom. That's what he told me. And now I'm thinking, what is going on here? And I said, and then what happened? He said, well, we kept going. We didn't stop. There's a stop sign there. And he said, this person kept up with them. He said, Mom, I was going 45 miles an hour. That's dangerous with two people on the four-wheeler, no helmets. But, hey, that's just how we roll. Somebody wants to judge me, that's fine. They cross the road to come down to the cutoff road that comes to our house. This person thing, whatever it is, was keeping up with them steadily back. My son said he stopped the four-wheeler. They were going to shoot this person. And this person was gone. They came home, told me the story. I'm like, what? I called the sheriff's office. And then I realized I can't say there's no face there. So I kept the story basic. There was somebody chasing the kids, and can you bring some patrol out here? So I got in the truck with the kids, went to the area. They ran me down the story of what happened. There was nobody there. And then I said, show me the way you come home. So I went down the road, and then when we got to the state land, he says, and then I go through there, and I go through. I'm like, are you kidding me? You are going through the state land. Oh, yeah, that's how I always go. Okay, so we go home. A week or two later, they're out pulling sleds. It's snowing. There's a couple of kids out. There's two four-wheelers. This thing pops out again, starts chasing him. Now, I don't know what happened at that time. It wasn't as crazy as the first story. So this is my younger son who's had these not necessarily Sasquatch encounters, but weird things that have happened to him. I have got another audio recorder one night where it's 11 o'clock. I am talking to my son, again, a teenager. I'm in my kitchen. I turn on my audio recorder like I always did, and I stuck it on the back porch. And I'm mad about something. I'm talking to my son, and you can hear on the audio, they're doing, ooh, 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 and then you hear me talking. And I'm like, and no, 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 no. And then you can hear it go, ah. So I have that audio. I'll send it to you. It is crazy. So all these things have happened to my son. 2017, again, is when a lot of this stuff started happening. And I am glad I didn't sell my house. Thanksgiving time, I was coming home one night, again, from the same people that I worked for. It was Friday night. I came home. It was going to be Thanksgiving, and I know this because I was coming down our long road, and I was thinking, what are we going to do for Thanksgiving? It was 2017, and we had gotten this dog, Gunner. I'm going to tell you the story after this, what happened in 2018. So we got this dog in 2017 because we built a shop, and we had cleared 2 acres. And when they delivered the material for the shop, I noticed activity was ramping up, and I realized that I had put out my audio recorder, and this was like August, September, we were building the shop. A couple of things happened that were unfortunate. One, my son's dog got run over by heavy machinery, and he died. So my son's dog, Jackson, died, and then when they delivered the heavy metal, the sheeting for the shop, they just put it out there, and I put my audio recorder out. The next day, I heard 2 of those. I heard 2 clanking sounds. No human, not 4 men, could have grabbed the 25 long foot of the metal sheeting. It came on an 18-wheeler that barely got through my road, because my road is very, very skinny. And the guy kind of got mad at us and said, you didn't tell us it was your property. Hey, we didn't know it was going to be like that. So they delivered it. They laid it down. That night, I put my audio recorder out. The next morning, I was hearing it. You could hear bang, bang, bang. Something had gotten the metal and just slammed it down 3 times. And then I heard a meep from the woods. So again, I went out to the woods the next day. I said, okay, well, we're building a shop here. We had to clear 2 or 3 acres. Sorry, stop banging the shop, okay? Like, it's done. We're going to build it. I said, I'm sorry we disrespected you and didn't ask you. And then I left them some tobacco, and I walked in the house. Again, these are things that were taught to me from my Native American friends. And then my son's dog died, and then we went and got another dog because he was very sad. We got this black lab. He was 7 months old. His name is Gunner. I had another big dog. Her name is Roxy. She is a Malamute that I got, I think, in 2013. So now I have Roxy, and we have this lab, and Gunner was taken off all the freaking time, so we had to put up this fence. So we put this fence up, and the story comes in where I was coming in from work around November, and this fence was probably maybe a month or so old. So we also put in a doggy door from our front porch. So the dogs would come out through the front porch, and then they're in 1 acre that's fenced in. So I came home this one night, and I pulled up our driveway, and I remember thinking, God, I wish my husband would put a light on the shop, which we did eventually, because our driveway is kind of long, and it's a rock driveway. It's not concrete or anything like that, but still. And I got down from our truck, and I closed the door, and I heard from across the street a huge, like a log snapped. And I shut the door and I looked across the street. And then I ran to the gate. Well, I didn't run, but there was something different about this. Like they went out of their way to get me to notice them. So I had to open the gate, which was kind of hard because Gunner, the dog, the lab, had figured out how to hit the gate and the latch would unlock. And so my husband just tied this thing around. So I undid the gate, and I opened the gate and I closed it and I tied it shut. And then there was another crack from across the street. And I walked to the front porch. I turned around. I was tired. I was annoyed. I was thinking about quitting my job because one of the kids was very rough, and I think something had happened that night to where they wouldn't go to sleep. And I had to go through a series of exercises to get them, like, you can't just punish these kids. They would have serious behavioral issues. So I really didn't care to hear any of these noises. I was afraid, but I turned around and I looked across the street and I said, "What?" And then my dog came through the doggy door and laid down. Gunner lay down. My other dog, Star, my Melanie, did not come out. And I said, "That is your house." And I pointed to the mountain across the street. And I said, "This is mine. I'm going to bed." I said, "Quit it." I shut the door, closed the doggy door, and I went to bed. The next day, I had to go get my son from school. Now, the property across the street, I know this property because it was empty. We knew the owners. They had bought this property. They lived somewhere close to Seattle, and they had plans to build on there one day. So they asked us to watch it, and our kids played on there. And sometimes we would let our horses back in the day eat from this property. And because, in springtime, the grass was always out there. Plus, we had thrown some clover out there. So I knew this property. Plus, my kids would make forts across the street. And there was a rolling signature to the property. And a lot of the times I knew that they were out there spying on me because there was huge game trails where elk and moose would come through these big game trails. And I found tracks across the street too on this property. And I've heard things. And so the next day, after hearing that on that Friday night or whatever night it was, I was backing on my truck and I saw across the street the tree that I knew so well. It was bent over, like one of the arms of the tree was bent over. I thought, what the heck? Now, it hadn't snowed yet, I don't think. So I have a Dodge truck, and I got down, I left the door open, and it was running. So it was kind of going ding, ding, ding. And I walked into the clearing, and I looked at this tree, and it was bent over in a weird way, but it wasn't broken, or it was twisted weird. And then I felt like I was not alone, and I could feel, there was a presence there. So I walked to the tree line, and I started looking for the snapped off branches. And sure enough, there was 3 snapped off branches of these pine trees that I had heard 3 snaps the night before. And then I was like, whoa, this is something happened. So I started backing off, and I got to the clearing, and I said, I'm leaving. And then I walked underneath that tree again, and I said, did y'all do this? Like, what happened here? And I got into my truck and I left. And when we came home, I showed my son, and he was like, this is wild. And I've shown people that property. So that was 2017. And then, so now we have this black lab. We have this fence that we built. It's 2018, spring break, March, the end of March, which it still is very cold. Again, I put my audio recorder out. It's like 12:30 a.m. I was watching a movie, and the kids were in the RV outside, and I checked on them. I told them, hey, I'm going to bed. If y'all need to come in, that's fine. So I turned off all the lights, and I went to bed. Well, Gunner must have went outside because he came running in, like, I don't know, it was like half an hour later because I had kind of gone to sleep, and I had woke up, and he was freezing. He was cold. I'm like, shoot, did I not close the doggy door? So I don't remember if I did or not, but I remember he was cold. So the next day I got my audio recorder and I started playing it. I would play it and listen to it while I was drinking my coffee. Within 5 minutes, I can hear this dog barking off in the distance. Woo, woo, woo. And then I hear this, and then barking and barking and the same growl. And I'm like, what? I'm thinking the neighbor's dog. And then I realize it's Gunnar. It's my dog. And I know exactly where he's at. I'm like, oh no, whatever, that's been hanging around here. The kids had also been out walking the night prior. The first night they were out walking and they were waiting for another friend to come over, and they came in and they said, we hear something heavy across the street breathing. And they said it's something big. And I said, okay, well, hold on. I walked outside. Now, one of my friends, my son's friend, told me that his mother didn't believe in Sasquatch, and basically they thought I was crazy. I said, really? Well, you might hear something. And then I made a call. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. And yes, they did hear something. I don't remember what. But let's just say that he peed on my couch, and the next day he would not stay here. So his mother came and picked him up, and I thought, okay, great. I'm gonna hear something from this mom now because I scared her kid. So something happened. I can't remember, but he did get scared, and she came and picked him up, and he left. So then the next night is when I put the audio recorder out, and then they were still out there. And then the next day is when I heard Gunnar barking, and then is when I got that roar. And I went outside the front porch, and Gunnar sat on the front yard, and he refused to go any deeper into the woods. And so I put him on a leash, and I took him outside of the fence, and he walked with me. But when we got to the end of the driveway where there's no woods, because, it's my driveway, there's woods to the right, I was walking him on the outside of the fence, and I walked to the corner where he was at. My fence had been peeled back on the bottom, which I don't understand. And then I could see where Gunnar had been inside the fence at the corner there of my property, and something had dug a hole there. I think that was him. There's a big game trail that goes outside of my fence, and it goes straight across the street and up into the mountains. So something was there and was barking at him. And something that I do with all my new animals is I introduce them to the property, and I say, this is Gunnar, hands off. So I was staring at so I'm holding the leash of Gunnar, and I'm looking across the street. And I say something to where, this is not okay. I go back inside, and I'm thinking, this is really crazy. So I play that for the kids that afternoon, because they got attitudes, and they ain't listening to me, and I'm like, okay, listen to this. This is why y'all ain't going nowhere. And I played it. And their eyes got big as saucers. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a dragon roaring. And they're like, that's crazy. I'm like, no, something is out there. I don't think it's from the regular clan. So I went back out there later that evening, and I said, okay, well, you've been here for a couple of days. It's time for you to move on. And then I asked my local clan, if they're not, local here, can you get them out of here? So now I'm talking to the woods. My mentality is a little different. And 2018 came around. Some other things happened. So now some other things have happened to where I am witnessing metaphysical things, okay, happening right in front of my eyes. We took a family picture at Christmas. My older son brought his fiance over. She's the photographer. We were standing in our road. We had our weapons. We were all holding weapons. I wasn't. My husband had his AR. I don't know. My other son had a rifle, and so did my daughter-in-law. Well, my son's fiance. And my other son is standing next to me, and he's got a rifle. And we take a picture to where she put out the camera, and then she set the timer, and then it took a picture. Well, sometime later, a friend of mine who I hardly hear from contacted me, and I knew she was one of those woo people. And she said, hey, there's something in the photos. I said, what are you talking about? So she said, blow it up. So I blew up the photo, and I saw something, but it wasn't clear. And then I was like, I kind of thought, okay. It's like I was kind of halfway open to it, but I wasn't totally. So then, time went by and I would be outside. Again, I've had people over. I've heard things. I started taking photos and videos with my phone. And then I started exploring more. And then I was opening up my mind to the possibility that there is something more happening here, because now I started praying out in the woods, and I said, hey, I'm going to pray. Do you guys want to pray with me? I mean, whoever is around, that might sound crazy to you, but I would walk my property many, many times and pray. So I started seeing things in photos. I don't know how else to tell you. I was seeing beings in photos. I was seeing multiple beings. And I opened up that photo again of us standing in the road, and it looks like a National Geographic picture of my family there. I'll send it over to you. And I could see a freaking wolf, like a dogman's head above my head. Not a Sasquatch, a dogman's head. Like in between changing, or she described it as this wolf being was changing into, I forgot how she put it, into another dimension. It was raising his vibration, because they can do that, and that's how they hide. Now, I'm learning all this. This is all new to me. All I know is I see it, and I see other things. And from that point on, that was normal for me. I did a complete 180, and once I did that, things were ramping up right in front of my face. I would hear things walking up to me, and then there was nothing there. And I said, God, would you just show yourself already? So then I started putting up some trail cams by our shop, because there was break-ins of the place. And then I asked them if I could put the trail cam out in the woods, but I kind of just put it up. I didn't ask them if I could take their pictures. So I put up a trail cam, and I got like 90 photos of nothing. They would set off the camera. They would move the camera. Then it was knocked off the tree. And finally, like, why didn't you get this, Cindy? I said, okay, sorry. I won't do this again. If I do, I'll ask you. Because I did ask them if I could audio record them, and I did get various audio recorders. Not all the time did I get it, because there was things off in the distance that I would get other sounds. But for all the close proximity audio recordings, more than likely I did ask. So after that, I started really exploring the possibilities of the unknown. I started studying Ron Moorhead, who was a friend of mine kind of at that time. Arla was a friend of mine since Oklahoma. A lot of people know Arla. I started talking to her, and then I met Tobe Johnson. I did a show with Tobe. He hooked me up with Rich Stromo. Rich Stromo talked to me for hours on Facebook Messenger, and a lot of things were just like started falling into place. 2021, my husband we retired. We went out of town. My younger son stayed at our property, so we could go back to my property in East Texas, where we are starting to snowbird now every winter. So the winter of 2021 to 2022, I formed a team. So Sasquatch Sisters Northwest was born. So the thing that completely changed my mind was sometime in 2020 or 2021. I don't know what year it was. Maybe it was 2019. I have it written down because I'm writing a book. So I was out in my front yard, and there's this tree that the moose like to eat. And I was looking at the trampoline, because I was thinking I need to take this trampoline down, but I was too lazy because it was kind of old. And I was thinking, I'm just going to leave it up. Well, I noticed my dog walking through this bush, and I felt a presence. I felt a signature. So a lot of the times when I'm talking to people, I will say I developed good feelings for when the female that you heard cooing, I named her Kayla. She's come around a couple of times. I did have a visual of her one night. And it was, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2018, 2019. I would have to go back and look at my notes. We have an area called the Pet Cemetery. I had a dog that died, and I was out there late one night. We had just buried her. I was really sad. And I could feel her come, basically. I don't know how else to describe it to you. I looked up, and there she was. It was dark, but she popped out from behind the tree. I mean, not popped out, but she kind of came out, and I could see the outline of her body. So I don't know what color she was or how tall she was, but she was maybe, I don't know, 7.5 feet. But her eyes were this red-orange, and they emanated brighter and then less, and brighter and less. And let me tell you what, the feeling that I was getting from her was not anything scary. She knew I was sad, and I was like, it's you. And then she turned around, and she was gone. Now, of course, it's nighttime. I can't say she disappeared into thin air because she's at the back of the woods, but I know what I saw, and I know it was her. After that, I felt a little bit better, and so now my life is completely different. They're coming around quite a bit. I'm hearing all kinds of things. Now, I've had people over. We've had fires. We've heard things, and then the other person didn't. So there could be, like, my husband has never seen anything. My husband has heard things, but he is not there. So with that mentality, which I hate to say closed-minded, but because it's not his thing, he's not going to have these encounters, okay? You're not going to have these kind of encounters if you're going to have that way of thinking, okay? And that's okay, because it's not meant for everyone, and I don't expect anyone to believe me, because I used to make fun of the woo people. I used to make fun of people like Carla, people like Tom, and now they're very, very good friends of mine that I swear by them.
Are you talking about Tom Cantrell?
Yes.
I just interviewed him yesterday afternoon. That's wild. Yeah.
Okay. He's on my book. Mm-hmm. So my dog is going through this tree, and I got my phone. I started videoing, and I could see through my phone. I saw a Sasquatch, interdimensional. I mean, right there. I could see the back of him, and I say he because that was the energy I got. No, I didn't see any parts that would indicate he was a male. I just saw the back of him. He was sitting down, and the feeling that I got was opportunistic. Amazingly, that I could have that opportunity. It was like the final clarification, and I went, it's you. Not that I knew him, but I was like, oh my gosh. I put my phone down, and my dog started walking to the house, and she was fine. And I put the phone up again, and I moved just a little bit, and I could see the side of him, and it looked like he was chewing on something. Then he got up and walked off. Like Predator movie, looking like something at that. I went into the house. So after that, this is all normal for me. I formed a team in 2022. That summer, my team was on my property. We were doing some sound bowls, some cleaning of the land to raise air vibration, which we discovered there's a ton of things that were tied to me and to my family, spirits, Indian spirits that were, we did some kind of ceremony. I didn't, but some people that were on my team at that time did. Then later that evening, we were smudging each other, and one of the gals that was walking said there was 2 portals there, and she did it. I couldn't tell you the method she told me, but I had seen many lights from that area. That's another thing. I've seen orbs. I've seen lights in the woods. And then we saw 2 Sasquatches pop their heads out. I would call like a tree peeker. And I turned around. I didn't see it first. One of my partners did. I said, oh my gosh. And I said, can I take your picture? I know I sound like a crazy person. And I started flicking away. The feeling that I had, I can't even describe it to you, but it was fine. It was clean, and it was fine. They had our trust. They knew we respected them. I didn't see them as a beast. I saw them as a person, as their own race, as someone smarter and brighter than us. I saw them as part human. I do support Melba Kitchen's work. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. So to me, in my mind, that explained it to me a little bit. we went up on the mountain and we did some clearing there, came back down. And I mean, it's just been really crazy. And in 2022, we went to Phenomicon. Me and a friend went to Phenomicon because I'm here in Utah right now. We came down here. I was gifted some tickets actually from one of my friends who couldn't make it. So last minute, we came down here, stayed at my mom's house by American Fork, and we stayed here for a couple of days. And then I drove to Vernal, I never say it right, Utah, to the conference. And I was going to go look for some friends like Adam Davies and, what's his face? Russell Accord, some of the Skinwalker people, Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep.
And my friend wanted to go talk to these psychic people, which I wasn't there for that. So I turned my head and I'm trying to call I'm waving at Adam Davies. He had this t-shirt or something. And then I look at this lady. There's a lady by the name of Rebecca Frost. Oh, shoot. Am I saying her name wrong? Anyway, this lady looks at me, and there's people standing around. There's some friends of mine standing by her, and there's a Lakota elder also standing on the other side of him that I met eventually. Well, she goes, I can see your Sasquatches. She's telling me this across the freaking room. Yes, way. Now, on the way down, I started crying because my Malamute was sick. I knew something was wrong, and I was talking to my friend, and she said, hey, do you have a white dog, a wolf dog? And I walked up to her. I said, is this some kind of joke? She put her hand out, and she said, hi, I am Rebecca Frost. And I was like, okay. I said, yes, I have a dog. She's old now. And then she said, okay, well, your Sasquatches are telling me that she's sick and they're saying it's cancer, and you need to take her to the vet. And everybody's jaw drops. My friend's jaw drops. My other friend's jaw drops because she knows about my dog. And I was like, no way. So she gets a little emotional, and I get emotional. And I said, okay, I'll take her to the vet. And she said, there's a stump on your property that has an arm sticking out. They want maple syrup and they want sweets. What? And
holy mackerel.
Yeah. And I said, oh my God. Okay. And so now I know it's not a joke. And my friend recorded this. I do have one of the videos. She recorded it. And then I open up my phone and I show her Star, and I'm trying really hard not to cry. And she goes, look, there's that little thing flying around. That's a fairy. I'm like, what? I'm not into fairies. Like, what? She goes, that's a fairy. Well, I didn't see it, but she was showing these other people that were passing my phone around. And then I walked away, and that whole weekend was just like weird. It was magical. It was weird. I came home. I took the Star to the vet. It was confirmed she had cancer and she had an enlarged heart. They put her on medicine and water pills, and she died in my arms 4 months later. February 2023, she died. A week later, my dad died. And I could not stop crying for my dog. My father, I had a hard time. Me and him had a hard time. Had a hard relationship, and I just couldn't cry. It was too much. And I have a photo of, there's a juvenile Sasquatch that I did not know was her friend. It was coming around. I have 2 photos of a interdimensional Sasquatch in both of these photos. I have many photos where they appear like that. I have photos in 2007 where I wasn't even in that mentality mode, but now I can see years later, I can see these same photos, and I can see where these mama Sasquatches are sitting in the reeds by the Priest River, and one has got a baby in her arms. Many people have seen this photo, and the only reason I can see it is because I have accepted the fact that there's more to this than them just being flesh and blood. And I mean, you can call me crazy, you can lock me up, I don't care. This is my life, this is what I have lived. And I realize now that she told me, they want you to speak for them. This is going to be like, this is what you need to do. So I spent 2023, my team kind of fizzled out, which was fine. and because of this thing with the ability of the pictures, which we do believe that once you take a photo of a Sasquatch, they already know what you're thinking, and any photo can change. A photo will never stay the same. It can change. They can even be gone from the photo. And you ask anyone like Tom, and I'm pretty sure he will also agree with you. So I had a team for a little bit, but then it kind of fizzled out, and then I started snowbirding, and then all these other things were happening. Other doors were opening up for me, and a lot of people were reaching out to me. And so now that's what I'm doing. That's what I feel like my job is. I speak for the forest people. We research through respect. I don't always do that. There's an area that we found these massive structures not too far down the road from where I live. I'm studying that right now. I've got some photos I can send you. They're really crazy. We walked into one of we call it the longhouse. We climbed into the structure, didn't ask. So we were hit up. I was sick for like a week and a half. My partner was sick, like having vertigo 24/7, throwing up. I could barely walk. We had to speak at Southeast Washington. There was an event up there, and thank God we were feeling better at that time. So my life is completely different, how I see these beings. Now, are there some aggressive ones out there? Yes. I have gotten reports of where I live. There's an aggressive one up at Priest Lake. Now, the bad thing about this whole thing is that I've lost a lot of friends because I took a photo of a report that I got, and I met the lady, and I walked up to this teepee hut, and this teepee had human components to it, but it also was also woven together with intricate components as well. So I looked at the lady. She said, I just found this thing out here. She got my number. I met her. I took like 2 photos of the structure. She had a dog, and I felt like it was time to go. I said, it's time to go. Again, I always watch the animals. Her dog seemed fine. We walked out of there. Well, I think I put it on one of the local boards, and the photo changed, okay, down the road. I put the photo of the picture out there, and I think I took it down. I deleted it. And then years later, the same photo popped up, but it had a Sasquatch coming out of a tree, okay? And some people think it looks real. Some people think it looks like yard art, but I've gotten different answers from people who were trying to feel it out. And some people say it's the real deal because they are alive in the trees. The trees are energy. Everything is energy. Everything is frequency. The higher you raise your vibration, the more clear things are. The more afraid you are, the more. So they do have that capability. They know how to do that. Ron Moorhead explains it in his book. In fact, I write about him in my book. I've interviewed him. I interviewed Tom Cottrell. My book is almost done. Hopefully this fall I can be done with it. And I've taken a couple of months off. But I write about my journey in my book because I feel like that's my job. And yes, that picture, I made the mistake of putting it on Facebook, but I did put in the comments, I described very intricately what happened. And I was very specific when I said, I don't know what this photo changed. I even asked if they could use my photo in the video of the Brett and Jill, that amazing documentary that they did, A Flash of Beauty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the second one. And so now people were talking about me, saying, she's a liar and a hoaxer. And even some of my own team that I researched with got pretty distant, which is fine. I mean, it does seem a little crazy. And, like I said, my father had been diagnosed with cancer. Well, no, I didn't tell you, but my father died from cancer. So 2023 was really, I've grown a lot. I have done a lot of seeking for answers. And that is what my job is. My journey has only begun to come to the next level. But because I live in Texas now half the year. So this last December, I walked out into the back property. So I basically moved back to where I used to live before I moved to North Idaho. My kids are grown. My older son lives in Spokane. He's married. I have a granddaughter. My younger son has a girlfriend. And ever since 2021, he lives in the house. We have a big toy hauler. My husband has a Harley. We take our toys down and we've hit the road. And so that is what we're doing now. This last year, when we got down to the ranch in East Texas, or our property, it's not really a ranch anymore because we don't have horses or anything. I walked out to the second fence where our property ends because I felt like I was called out there. You know, I felt something, and I just do what I feel. And I started filming. Now, I have a rescue dog, and I saw her back there. I thought, put the dog, get back here. I didn't realize she had got out, and she was basically taken off. And then something scared her by the back pasture where there was still a shed where we used to keep some of our saddles and stuff. She jerked her head over, and I knew she was picking up on something. And so I was calling her back, and I opened up the fence, and I said, get over here. And then I started filming and taking pictures. And sure enough, later, some of my colleagues showed me many peeking out from behind the shed and in the tree line. And I think that they chased her back to me because she is a runner. I mean, now she isn't, and I still have her. I never intended to keep her, but so Star died back in 2023, and then we have another dog, and then Daisy, I got this dog in December. So now the Texas clan has come back, or whoever they are. So that is what I'm going to start researching now, the next level. I'm going to start really communicating with them. I'm going to, we left Texas in May. I got back up to our North Idaho ranch, and I was gone to Forks because I was going to speak there, and I wanted to meet Rich Germo in person, amazing human being. And like I said, Tobe Johnson and me are friends. I completely backed that guy, How to Hunt guy, that Steve Isdall guy. And he's even been told of some of my crazy stuff that's happened. And then I went to another event, the Sasquatch family reunion that Kelly, this girl Kelly in Kettle Falls, her and her husband do this event, and it's amazing. We do a lot of things, the work for the people, for the not just the Sasquatch, the ETs, everything that's involved with the collective. Look, I'm still learning about all that, like the collective, whatever. I do know that they do, like Mike Bodowitz has written a book about the Elder Council of 13. He just put out a book. I don't know, people might want to go read it. It's called Book of Elders. You can get it on Amazon. That's going to answer a lot of questions. If people are really wanting to know answers, read his book. Buy Arla's book. And I think you can get it on Amazon. Buy Tom Control's books. Do searches on Amazon. Buy their books. The Ghost of Ruby Ridge, I think, is one of the titles of Tom Control's book, and he writes about what really happened to Patty, the Patty film or something. I've read parts of it, but I don't remember the whole book. But these are people that anyone should listen to. In fact, I'm building up a library for the future generations to reference back to. And so the first book I'm writing is, and I'm not done, is about what's happened to me. And then I was done. But now all these things keep happening to me. I was up here in the Uinta Mountains, and me and a friend were hiking to Stewart Falls, and I was hearing things, and she was hearing things. But this is a heavily trafficked area, so I mean, who knows what's going on? Like, I can only do so much. So I'm going to get back. Hopefully Saturday I'll be home. From here until October, I will be doing live videos on my page. My intention is to have continuous study and interaction with my clan. And there's another group out there called Legacy Discovery. They have a YouTube page. You should look them up. It's called Legacy Discoveries. My friend that I researched with, she is amazing. She is Lakota. And she also lived there where I lived. In fact, you should call them up and I'll give you their names. Angelique Benham and her son Mitch, they have a team, and they also lived, and we've done some work together. And he is doing some heavy, extensive work, and it's all in order, and it's just amazing. So people can also go look up Legacy Discoveries on YouTube to get more answers. And so these are people that the Sasquatch people are trying to reach out to, and not just the Sasquatch, just other things out there, because we are living in the times now where the earth has decided to raise her vibration. Like, she's done everything. The dark is going to come to light. I don't care who makes fun of me anymore, because we're here to tell a tale. I'm a light worker. I'm here to be a voice for the Sasquatch people. I had these encounters, I believe, in East Texas, because I started out that way, and then I moved up to North Idaho, and then I went that way, and I've lived this life. People have witnessed it. Igor Bristov was on my property for like 5 days. He's in my book. He was in his bedroom, and in the bedroom that I gave him, and he sits there all day and works, and he comes out and goes, "Let's go for a swim." So he's a very good friend of mine. He's been on my property. He walked my whole property. Heck, he was telling me, "See, Cindy, this and this here is a blind. The Sasquatch people did this, they were spying on you, and then they did this." He watched my whole property. I've got a video of it, but again, the energies come into place where the video starts getting shaky, and it's changed over time. So that's where I'm at now. I will be back home next week. I will be in the mountains because it's huckleberry picking time, and I'm going to take it to the next level. Then this year, when I get to Texas, I'm going to continue that with that clan down there. I did find an area that I was called out to. It's a wildlife management control area. I was called out there by the forest people because it's completely trashed. I called the state. No one's giving me answers. When I get back, that's going to be my project. I was going to write a book, but my first thing I'm going to do is, and someone called me and said, "Hey, the Sasquatch people, I want you to go to this area and clean it up. Like, it's trashed. We need to clean it up." So I'm going to do that when I get to East Texas. I'm going to find out who's responsible for this area, and it needs to be cleaned up. So that's where I'm at right now. So they are very real. There are some bad ones out there, just like people. They are a people. And this is very real. They are not just flesh and blood. Buy Ron Moorhead's book. He's got 3 of them. The first one is Voices in the Wilderness. The second one is The Quantum Sasquatch, or something like that. And then the second one goes into it pretty good. Then the third one answers questions about interdimensional. Henry Franzoni, he wrote a book, Falling in a Cool Way.
I love Henry Franzoni so much. He is my guy.
Yes.
I love Henry Franzoni so much.
Yes. And you go look for him on a Flash of Beauty interview, and he will explain it like a scientist, how they interdimensionally change. He will, like I said, this is not something made up. This is not where you can roll your eyes. Go right the heck and do it, because you are missing out. Open up your mind a little bit, because I promise you there is more to this. Now, do they all have these capabilities? I don't know, because I don't see the ones in East Texas the same way. I see them as those being more aggressive. So you said the ones in North Idaho, you wouldn't want to go there. So I guess now, I know we've been on this phone way longer than what I had planned, but I'm sorry, you got me started. Can we go back to that comment where you said you think that they're very aggressive up here? Why would you say that?
So I said that because there was an interview I had with a hunter in northern Idaho, and it was a really interesting interaction he had. But I mean, I've also talked to another lady in northern Idaho, and she experienced some very, I would almost say, high strangeness, not just Sasquatch, but other things as well. So, yeah, I mean.
Is her name Angelique?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, because she is amazing.
Okay.
She was, okay. Well, so what happened to these people? They had scary encounters?
The main scary thing was, she was out walking her dog and a voice was calling to them from the woods, using their exact name.
Like what happened to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I still don't know what that was.
And there's a lot of missing people in that area, I believe, as well. So.
Shut the front door. Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't know the exact area, but it's just kind of weird vibes from northern Idaho, but maybe someday I'll go up there, but just some weird stuff I've heard. So,
well,
yeah.
My mountain is called Hoodoo Mountain, and the Indians named it a long time ago. There's the energy here that you will respect it.
Mm.
You will respect it. If you don't, and you know, then I'm not sure, but that's kind of where I'm at. And so I try to be very, very careful, because the more you know, the more you have to learn to discern things.
Sure.
Because you are a door wide open now. And I've had a lot of scary things happen as well. And I am sleeping out in my woods. I'm terrified to sleep out in my woods. And all it says, you have to get past that. I know. So last year I started sleeping at the tree line, and I have no shame in telling you I didn't get much further past 10 yards in the tree line, and it gets cold at night. So one night I was out there asleep. My dog will not go with me in the tent out there. I've heard things. I've even heard wolfen, like dogman stuff. My property has been remote viewed 2 times. Jessica Jones has remote viewed my property.
Sure.
You can go on YouTube, and she's done just ET stuff, portals. There's a dogman she saw, and yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So now I'm studying the East Texas clan. I got to clean that property down there, whatever that's trash. And now I'm going to start interacting with them out there. I said I would never give them food, but I am going to put maple syrup out there. I said I wasn't going to do it. And when my dog Star died, as predicted, I called Rebecca Foster up and I told her, and I tagged her on her page to let people know that this woman is the real deal. So that's kind of it. And we've probably been on here 3 hours, and I said an hour. Yeah, right.
Cindy, it's such an incredible journey if you think of the whole thing, and just thank you for taking the time to lay it all out. And I'm sure many people will learn a ton of things from this. And also, how can people keep up to date with what you're doing, when your book's going to come out, and all that good stuff?
Okay, so I am on Facebook, Cindy and Bueno, Bueno, Goodbrake, Good, Brake. You can send me a friend request, or you can send me a message. It'll go to my other folder. For some reason, I am an activist, and a lot of people don't like political stuff, but I will speak up. So hopefully people will know that I am trying, come to my page. If you see something you don't like, and if it's not Sasquatch related, don't worry about it. Send me a message, because I have another page. It's called Sasquatch Sisters Northwest. And I have a lot of videos on there that go back to 2021. You can scroll down and see them. And that's where I will be continually putting stuff up there. I put stuff up there from Texas, from years past, where I'm out on my 4-wheeler and I'm doing something. I have some howls, some audios on that page, so people can find me there. We are living in the last days, and I honestly believe that a lot of the things that are happening here in the world is because it's time. And I think part of the the energies, like I said, that are happening right now. A lot of people are waking up, and part of waking up is having the ability to see see them change interdimensionally, like right in front of your eyes. So, yeah.
Fascinating. Well, Cindy, I hope we keep in touch. I'm sure there might be a follow-up sometime in the future as things will continue to progress. But thank you so much for chatting today, Cindy. It has been a really fun and interesting conversation.
Well, thank you for letting me talk nonstop for who knows how long.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. Shame on you.